When you put organic matter, like if you put a mouse in this ultra high intensity field of sand, and it's hollow and the mouse floats because water is I'll control yesterday. This is quite a bit of flop from my silver side.
Wander away.
Yeah, I actually wanted to do this because I decided I wanted to start building my tracks. I was looking at listening to the equipment that my girlfriend lost knowledge.
He's down putting signs up around buildings. He'll be back shortly. Can you live without him? Yeah, I just set him up.
When did you put the SRI? 68?
Right,
Dawn's got a I was just going back to the paper.
Okay, you're at building E?
What?
I'll be right down.
But you sort this out. You sort out shrinking quarter with this. Well, I want to start getting some shaped energy electrics. It's something I started when I was 17 after Augment.
Hello. Yep, on my way.
Hi.
Oh yeah, he's done.
Yeah. The one you guys
Did you pick it out for him?
actually, he picked out his, he likes to pick out his Fortunately, he's missing it. You guys have somebody else to pick for us. Yeah. Oh, you don't even go? She just brings it home? That's cool. Every once in a while, at first, and then I brought him to her something like that. I still don't try and do it.
Both are Cheyer.
I guess so.
His fiance just buys him.
I'm not going to be out
When you get married, are you doing like a big shooting? There we go. That works.
Dean's ready to go, and so I get the chance to say, hello everybody, I'm very pleased that you're here, and the progress on the HyperScope project is really remarkable, and I wrote it up about 6 or 7 years ago, and sat there, and finally National Science Foundation a year ago came through and said, hey, would you come back and visit us? You know, and I kept telling them I'm such an old guy and I'm not at universities anymore and things like that. But so then they actually offered to support a project, and HyperScope is the one I thought we really ought to do, and so it came in. And guy that did the developing and to lead it, and somebody to do it, and somebody to help, and somebody. So it was very exciting for me to watch. And so it's unfolding in ways that aren't exactly like I pictured. I have to reserve that sort of statement, you realize. Anyway, I'm very proud of how much progress it's made, etc. So I'm all eager to see what he's going to tell you, show you. So is that okay? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, that's okay. You know, actually him not being exactly pleased with what that's like a high compliment.
And it's really just a treat to see
Sorry,
a
Eugene.
bunch of guys that
This is exactly the way.
get acquainted with new ones and see some new ones again. It was fun. No, I get relaxed.
I wanted to second that. I'm Christina Engelbart. I worked on the team on and off, and it just been such an exciting project, and these guys are so impressive. So thank you so much for all of this.
You guys are going to have to put up with a lot of Oscar madness at the beginning, right? Academy Award, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys, you know, there's a lot of thank yous that are going to happen. We're having a few technical difficulties, so I'll just talk a little bit about the project and actually throw out a few acknowledgments. So my name is Eugene Kim, and I had the honor of managing this project, this HyperScope version 1.0. As some of you know about me, my business is not actually software development, it's collaboration. And one of the things that I think is really important about this project in general to keep in mind is that if this project was just about coming up with a software tool that was nifty, granted, then it's not something I really would have been interested in getting involved with. The HyperScope is about much more than creating a nifty piece of software. It's about really Doug Engelbart's larger vision about how we basically solve the world's most complex problems, how we improve collaboration, how we get collectively smarter. And so in the process of doing the code and generating some of these ideas, what we really want to do is spread the meme, right? Spread the big ideas, change how we think about the world, change how we think about knowledge, change how we think about collaboration, and really start saying if we can just sort of collectively get our acts together and get better at doing whatever it is that we do, so including living in this society. So this project is ultimately about people, and I think if there's one takeaway to keep in mind, is about technology is supposed to be about helping people and not the other way around. And I think that's not the paradigm today. It's not the way we live in our society, and whatever we can do to start changing that attitude is something that we want to start doing. And so that was very much the focus, the larger picture of what this project is about. I really treated this project, as I treat all my projects, as a collaboration problem. So there was certainly a software project management aspect of it, but the other big aspect of it was about community and about community learning and about catalyzing collaboration within this community. So how do we take a core set of ideas and really an existing community, a community that's been around for a very long time, but that hasn't necessarily coalesced as one, and how do we get these folks to coalesce and really start learning a common language and learning a way to progress in terms of how we do things. So as I said, this project is ultimately about people, and so I want to open this by just coming out and thanking a bunch of people, so I hope you'll bear with me for a second. I have my list. The first group of folks I really need to thank are all of you for coming. When I say that this is a community project, I genuinely mean it. If you actually look, if you actually sit down and you trace all the things that we've accomplished, and then you go back and you look at all the dependencies, all the knowledge that was needed to accomplish every single one of those steps, all of the people required, and basically the knowledge sharing that happened, and the community coming together and being generous with that knowledge and being generous with their time and their resources and so forth, it's pretty amazing to see how much actually went into this whole thing. If any of you are talented in visualizing that sort of thing or creating visualizations, maybe one day we can start doing that because it's really remarkable. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you for all of you who have helped out in any way. We very much appreciate it. Of course, thanks to NSF who funded the project. We were quite happy about that. There's a group called Amtech, who unfortunately no one from Amtech could come here, but they've been helping Doug's organization, the Bootstrap Alliance, for many years now. They do government industry consortiums, they do facilitation and collaboration, and all sorts of good stuff. And they have these beautiful offices on the marina in Redwood City. And if any of you have seen any of our pictures, you'll see us working, sitting outside on the lawn having our meetings, with this marina in the background. So we were just completely spoiled to basically use their facilities as a resource, as well as them helping out with a lot of the operational and administrative things. So we really owe a great deal of thanks to Amtech. We owe a great deal of thanks to the folks from the Augmentation Research Center. I don't know how many of you realize this, but this floor, actually, of the SRI building has some historical significance. It is where Doug's original lab was, the ARC lab. They actually had the entire second floor, and we have several representatives from ARC. If you worked at ARC or Timeshare, any of the companies and efforts that followed afterwards, please stand up. I know you guys have to go through this all the time when that was a remarkable lab. If you've never had the opportunity to really read up on computer history, or read up on innovation, read up on all of these fascinating things that have emerged in our society today, you know, pick up a book sometime and check out SRI and look for Doug's name and read about what happened. Because it's really extraordinary how generative that time was and how much innovation happened and really solid thinking happened out of that lab, including most of what we have in front of our desks today. And it was such a treat for the team, for us to really get to interact with all the great folks from the ARC lab. And there's one guy in particular I want to mention. His name is Bill Barnes. He couldn't be here. He lives out in Colorado. We talked to a lot of ARC people. We were really picking a lot of people's brains. And Bill was sitting out there in Colorado, and he had found out about the project, so he was on our mailing list. And we would find really obscure things about Augment, like the internals of Augment. You know, this is a 40-year-old program, and this guy hadn't had access to the source code in like 20 years. And Jonathan would be, you know, ripping his hair out over some just tiny little thing that he couldn't figure out. And so, you know, finally out of frustration, he would mail the list. And then Bill would sit there and write this long treatise, just completely detailed about exactly what the problem was. I mean, it was amazing. Saved us many, many, many hours of time. So
Off the top of his head, nonetheless.
Off the top of his head.
I mean, that's amazing.
You know, he was Christina's office in Washington for years.
Yeah, for a couple of years.
Well, I remember Bill had vision impairment, and perhaps that's why he could remember.
interesting. I have to remember.
Is the Connect display driver is acting weird with his overhead?
Okay.
So let's go with that.
Okay, we'll go with this.
We go for Windows.
All right. The Windows machine is not working, so we're going to go with the Mac.
Shocking.
Yeah. Okay, that'll be nice. Now I'll see how they do.
Right, okay. You'll see how it gets working.
It's probably something basic in the software.
Not a bug in our code, I swear. So thank you very much, people at ARC. I mean, that connection. Not only did it, it was just a tremendous learning experience, and it was a lot of fun for us to be able to interact and get a sense of what was going on back then in the thinking, and also how much of that thinking is still relevant today. We got to thank the Computer History Museum, and John Cheyer is sitting over there, who in addition to working on the team, is also the tech lead of a project called the NLS Augment Restoration Project. It's a project to take the Augment code and basically restore it. What's interesting about the Augment code is it's actually still running, and there are actually still folks using it every day. It runs on that PDP-10 emulator, and it's faster than it was when it was actually running on a PDP-10. It's the box is at Logitech. It's running Linux, and it's running an emulator written by Ken Herenstein, who's now at Google.
And the second instance is actually running on my Linux server in my my house.
Okay.
So at some point, we do have demonstration things up and running, and thanks to John's work. And at some point, that code will be available, so all of you will be able to run the original Augment system on your PCs, which will be a lot of fun. We did all of our work, original work, in Augment. And the reason we did that was, it was really a gut check for us. We didn't want to sit down in this project and start implementing all these things and then say, you know what, we're just doing this because it's really cool and it's historically interesting because Doug Engelbart told us to do it. And that wasn't, you know, it sounds like a good reason. Maybe it is a good reason, but it wasn't good enough for me. And so we actually spent the first few months actually working entirely in the Augment system, really learning the intricacies of it. One of the things that the team got to do, which was pretty exciting for us, was we got to use the original chord sets. I don't know how many of you have seen these before, and I should have actually brought one, but one of the inventions that hasn't made it to the mainstream right now that came out of ARC were things called chording key sets, which is a five-key keyboard. It literally looks like 5 piano keys. It's similar to that. And
The British version.
That's a British version. That's the
Psyche.
the Psyche. That's right. And so there are coordinate key sets that exist, but we actually got to use original coordinate key sets that are like 30 and 40 years old. And the way we got them working was not only John's work, but John's friend Brian Cardano, who actually plugged it into an oscillator, figured out the keys, and basically built a USB interface for these 30 to 40-year-old devices. And so it was actually a lot of fun for us to actually play around with the key sets and the mouse. And it's actually, I mean, it makes a big difference too. If any of you are interested in helping restore some of these key sets and actually write operating system drivers, and if you know how to do that sort of thing, or if you know someone who does, please talk to me because, or talk to John, because we don't think it's that hard if you know how to write an operating system driver, which none of us have ever done. And we think this would actually be really useful. So the other thing that we use that we could not have been able to, we would not have been able to use Augment if we didn't have another piece of software written by someone else in the community for the Computer History Museum named Howard Palmer. He wrote an Augment client for us in Java. And the coordinate key set actually interacted with a Java client, and because we had this Java client, I was able to run it on my Mac and Linux and actually interact with the original hypertext system, which was way cool. So thank you very much to Howard and Brian and all the people at the Computer History Museum project. We've got a couple of representatives here from the Open Augment project. A couple of years ago, Dave Thomas. There are 3 Dave Thomases, for those who don't know this. There's at least 3 significant Dave Thomases. There's the Wendy's Dave Thomas. This is not the Wendy's Dave Thomas. There's the pragmatic programming Dave Thomas, Ruby guy, who this is not that Dave Thomas. And then there is Dave Thomas, who has been very involved in object technologies and Smalltalk and other things.
In Canada.
In Canada, he's Canadian. I think the other Dave Thomas, the pragmatic Dave Thomas, is also Canadian. Right? So we've got 2 Canadian Dave Thomases. The Wendy's Dave Thomas is from the States, so that helps a little bit. And he's dead. Dave started a project called Open Augment a couple of years ago, and it was a similar project as the HyperScope, except it was really more about historical restoration. And they sat down and they really studied the system, and they learned a lot. And we were able to bootstrap on top of their learning, and we actually stole some user interface ideas, and really did a lot of things. And they came and they participated in our meetings. So Jeff Eastman over there, and Craig Latta, and certainly Dave Thomas. And so that has been extremely helpful. The last person I want to thank before introducing the team is Alex Russell, who is not here today, but Alex Russell is the author of Dojo, which is the JavaScript toolkit that we used. And Alex came to one of our meetings too, and he got all excited about what we were doing. And we had a couple of other Dojo folks as well. Brad, who is our software architect and lead implementer. He's also a Dojo guru, so we were really lucky to have him.
Dylan's one of the lead.
Excellent. Thank you, Dojo. Dojo made our lives very easy, so we appreciate it. And we have some changes we want to. So I want to introduce the team, and really, so there are a few people, as if I haven't singled out enough people, there are some additional people I want to single out. I want to start with John Deneen over in the back there. John has been part of Doug's community for quite some time, and he found out about what we were doing, and he lives all the way out in Walnut Creek, and he basically said, you know what, I want to videotape what's going on here. And so he came out and he attended every one of our meetings, and now I have a stack of DVDs that's just an archive of what we did. I can't imagine why anyone would watch them. I certainly will not want to watch them, but maybe 10, 20 years from now someone will want to watch them, and maybe someone will want to go back and look at some of the discussions and the arguments and the good times that we had in the meetings. And so I think it's a really valuable resource, and we really appreciate what John brought to the table.
Thank you.
The other thing that John did, which was really valuable, was he ran into Craig at a conference up in Berkeley. And Craig, of course, was part of the Open Augment project. And he came to one of our meetings, and he sat down, and then he kept coming. And Craig has just been an extremely valuable contributor to the whole process. Just in addition to being a Smalltalk guru, which we actually found a use for. because some of the Augment clients that currently exist are actually written in Smalltalk. He's just been a great presence, a great software engineer, and has just helped our discussion tremendously to be able to bounce things off you. So thank you very much, Craig. Jeff Rulifson over here. I don't know if you remember this, but so Jeff Rulifson is the chair of the Bootstrap Alliance. He's at Sun. He was also the software architect of the original Augment system, and he's in the '68 video. So you can see Jeff 40 years ago.
Hasn't changed much.
He looks exactly the same. Haven't aged today. When I first met Jeff, it was like 6 years ago now, and Doug and I had met in 2000, and we were talking about collaborating on a few projects, and so Doug asked me to meet Jeff and talk to him a little bit about myself and some of the things that I wanted to do. And I was sort of peppering Jeff about questions about what it was like to work with Doug back in the day and the lab and all these things. And Jeff was telling me all of these horror stories, you know, all of these fun things. You know, it was tough. It was tough back then. You know, you're talking about changing everyone's thinking, right? You're talking about doing something that wasn't in anyone's head until 40 years later. And the reason it was in people's head in the first place was because of the work that came out of that lab. And in addition to it, there were challenges. When you have strong personalities in there, it's really tough. And so I was listening to these stories, and I turned to Jeff and I asked him, why did you do it? Why did you stick around? Why did you hang out? And Jeff's response, you could visibly see the change in his demeanor and the sparkle in his eye at that point. And he said, it was just so exciting. We were trying to change the world, and he was just, you could see the excitement there. Seeing that excitement, even 40 years later, is something that I remember very strongly. And it's something that I tried very hard to say, look, we want to recapture that. We're working on something that's exciting, and to the extent that's possible, let's see if we can recreate that. I think you see it a lot today in the Silicon Valley. I think you see it a lot in entrepreneurs and innovators out there. It's a passion that's universal, and I think it's critical in any successful project. So Jeff has been a supporter of the project. Jeff helped put this all together. He's been an invaluable resource, both organizationally, project-wise, but also in terms of actually sitting down and asking about software questions. Right? It's great to be able to ask the person who wrote the code about some of these different issues. So thank you very much, Jeff. Christina Engelbart, who introduced herself a little bit earlier. Christina, in addition to being one of Doug's daughters, is a longtime collaborator of Doug. Is probably, I'll go out on a limb here and say that Christina might understand Doug's ideas more than anyone else other than Doug. And that, and on top of that, Christina has really been involved in other things in the world over the past 40 years. And so she really bridges the gap between all of these different worlds, is a great communicator, was really able to help us with a lot of things. In addition to that, she has 2 daytime jobs. One of the daytime jobs being Cheyer, where she draws her salary, but then the other job being the mother of 2 children. And she lives up in 2 teenagers, no less, not just 2 kids. She lives up in Santa Rosa, which put her at a tremendous disadvantage, and it actually put us at a tremendous disadvantage. We're all Bay Area based, and we wanted to take advantage of that, so we were doing a lot of face-to-face meetings here. And while we were talking over email and over phone every week and so forth, I know it was really hard for all of us not to be able to get just constant, continuous feedback from Christina. But she really gave a lot. Even in the 0.5% of time we would have liked to have gotten from her, it was just very helpful. It helped me a lot personally to be able to kick things off Christina and so forth. And so, and again, it wasn't just organizational and project-wise, but it was also technical. I mean, all of these 2 people were crossing many bounds in terms of making this happen. So thank you very much, Christina, for that. The developers. Oh, the developers. First of all, I want to introduce Jonathan Cheyer, who I introduced before. One of the things about the developers for this team, Doug and I have been talking about this project since November, October, which is about when NSF finally gave the okay on this project. And we were sitting around, we were talking about strategy and process and all this stuff, and we were talking about team. And the one thing I'd said about the team and the people who write the code here is that we've really got to find some special people to do this project. When I do projects that involve software, I go out, I do a hell of a lot of due diligence. I'm pretty anal about this, and I go out and, because, writing great software requires great people. It's important. This project had other constraints. I didn't just want a great software person. In fact, I was willing to give up a great software person for someone who had other qualities. And the other qualities had to do with things like passion, but also caring about the world, right? Again, this is not a software project, right? This is much, much bigger than that. This is about solving the world's complex problems. And so it had to be someone who really cared about what was going on. Another thing that I thought was really important was communication, right? Relevance, someone who actually talked to other human beings. Very rare skill in this industry, but pretty critical. And then finally, it was someone who had a really healthy respect for the bigger picture, for history, and really, again, about communication, about respecting what's gone on in the past, while not worshiping it, right? Trying to understand what's happened, trying to learn from it, but then at the same time being open-minded about it and really innovating based on that. So I was very lucky to find Jonathan and Brad. The thing I always say about John when I introduce him is that John knows more about Augment than anyone else under the age of 35. And if you were a little younger, John, then I'd be able to say it would sound a lot better, right? But unfortunately,
I'm almost
John's
at
getting
35.
up there.
So you got to know this one.
That's right. So John's been part of John's been part of, again, Doug's community for a long time. He's been involved with a lot of things, and again, he switched jobs actually in the process of doing it, and actually got much busier. And he put in about 5 times more than we asked of him. And it was really, with both of our developers, my challenge was not getting these guys to work. My challenge was trying to prevent them from completely killing themselves. And they were killing themselves, I don't know if I was successful in that actually. We'll find out in a few days. But the killing themselves was not out of me being a slave driver. It was about caring about the bigger picture here. It was just a wonderful experience to work with these guys, and especially with Jonathan. So thank you very much, Jonathan. And then of course there's the man himself, Brad Neuberg. All this stuff that I'm going to be showing you here, the JavaScript source code, all this sort of stuff, Brad wrote it. It doesn't look nearly as impressive as what's underneath there. And I'll tell a story about Brad, which I think is pretty interesting. There's a picture on Flickr that Mal Kennedy took of Brad meeting Doug for the first time. It was at back in January, and it was at the Future Salon, which was at SAP over in Palo Alto. And what Brad didn't know, that Doug was giving a talk about his bigger ideas, and then I got up there. We hadn't even started the project yet, but I went up there and I'm like, "We want your help." And so then a lot of people came up to ask Doug questions, and Brad was one of them. That's where the picture was taken. What Brad did not know, and I'm not sure you even know this today, was that I had been doing due diligence on him for about a week and a half at that point. I had talked to a lot of his employers, and
I was wondering who was tapping my phone.
That's right. You know that whole NSA thing? And actually, at the Future Salon, I was talking to Mark, and Mark and I had been Mark Graham, who was one of Brad's employers at Rojo, and who gave you a glowing recommendation. We had been exchanging email and hadn't found the time to talk, so we were there and we were starting to talk, and then all of a sudden Brad walks up. So I had to shut up and pretend that I was talking about something else. But it goes back to the due diligence, right? John, like I said before, he had been part of the community. I knew all I needed to know about John. But this other person who was going to write the JavaScript stuff and knew the browser stuff, that was a space that I had not been deeply involved with, and I just didn't know the people. And so I had to work extra hard to find the right person. And Brad and I met actually at Christina's barbecue last year. And I remembered some things that he had worked on, and so I started doing some research, and I started asking some questions about him, and one thing led to another. And I was pretty convinced after doing all the due diligence that I had to sit down with him and just have a heart-to-heart with him and find out what was going on. So we had coffee, and we talked, and 5 minutes into it, I'm like, okay, got to get this guy. He was telling me about his job offer at Google. So I'm sitting in my head, like, you know, trying to pretend like, you know, whatever. But in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, got to get him away from Google.
Just for the record, it wasn't a job offer.
It was discussion.
In the middle of
Google.
the interview, the grueling
It
interview
was in
process.
the interview process. And of course, after the interview, after I talked with Brad, I'm like, you know what? I'm not really sure. I got to go and figure out what was, you know, talk to Doug and figure out what was going on. But I knew at that point what was going on. And then, of course, Brad over-delivered on the expectations. I mean, he's just been tremendous. He's come in, he's